All right. Now we're on to, welcome back to the Solution Club. We're on to a new topic, or not a new topic, but we're back to the original topic that got us started off today, which is the topic of the conversation. What is our goal? What should be our goal? That's an ongoing conversation. And by the way, it's not like any of these things ever get like decided. And this is an important realization. And I actually recorded a whole video called I and We. In fact, maybe we should just play that to get a taste of that. Yeah, let me just do that, and then we'll let me get it queued up. That'll take me a minute. I'm just gonna pause recording. Okay, so now I'm gonna screen share this one video on the I versus we thing. Here we go.
All right, welcome to the topic, I versus we. And this is closely connected to the convergence, and in particular, the collective superintelligence portion of the convergence, where I'll just put it in these very simple terms. Whereas in the past, when I was limited to who I could interact with effectively and intensively and ongoingly, to people I was in physical contact with, there was a lot of talk about, okay, what should we be focused on? Because the we was kind of a tight group. With collective superintelligence, when we suddenly have access to meet with face to face and be intimate with and really share deeply and in a safe space, all this is possible, and it's all happening. I know, because I spend, dozens of hours per week literally doing this, but with many other people. Again, radish.org is the place to check all that out. But as our numbers grow and as the network grows, we will have more and more access to more and more options to connect with a far greater diversities, just unimaginably large diversities. And under the right protocols and culture and rules and all kinds of other good stuff, basically safety guardrails and whatnot, we will be increasingly free to really focus on what each of us individually wants to focus on. And for reasons I'll talk about more in collective superintelligence and the convergence, there is there is a sort of invisible hand guiding the convergence and guiding the collective superintelligence towards maximally beneficial strategies and combinations of solutions to save as much of the diversity of life on Earth as possible. How could that be? Well, we'll get to all that. But building off that invisible hand, metaphor, borrowing from I think the original use that I've heard of it, which is Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, etc. But here, there's going to be an invisible hand of a totally different nature that I think will guide us on a really amazing path forward. Anyway, I really just wanted to open up the topic of I versus we, because I believe that the invisible hand will make it so that each of us can pursue whatever we're most passionate about right now in the moment, either a burning, passion that we've just, got to end hunger right now, or we've got to cool the planet or whatever, or we've got to, master collective superintelligence and evolve that, whatever it is, that each of us can follow what we're most passionate about in the moment. And the invisible hand will guide the whole river of humanity working together in a collective superintelligence to guide collectively the river. So there'll be sort of an invisible hand guiding the river. But it's an emergent invisible hand, similar to the one described in economics, which I'm not at all cool with the Adam Smith one, by the way, but I am super excited about this one. Anyway, much more to talk about this. Just wanted to introduce the topic. Thank you.
All right. Brilliant, if I do say so. I'm just kidding. But just kicking it off, because it is, for me, it's a powerful change in paradigm from, okay, I'm with, a limited group of people, like in a startup, right? That's what we would do. We'd get together and, all right, we're all in and da-da-da. And now what's the mission, right? And we would talk about what we should do. The paradigm now is completely different, because now the startup is Startup Earth, right? It's the whole planetary community of all of us participating in this emerging network of conversations. You can go to whatever conversation you want, right? And so total freedom of movement. And so, but at the same time, it's a balance, because on the other hand, we are a community here. And it's not like, Jackie's saying, oh, I don't like what Jamin's saying now. I'm just going to bolt over here to this other group and start hanging with them, right? Until somebody says something I don't like there, and then I'll bolt someplace else. No, there is a degree of, hey, we're in this together. Let's talk about it. And I think that that balance can be achieved very, very nicely within this overall framework of letting a gazillion flowers bloom. A conversation is a flower. It's churning out this transcript of everything that's being said, right? It self-identifies with title and hashtags and however else it wants to self-identify. And it can have explicit pointers to other conversations and saying, hey, we're building off of and feeding off of these conversations over here. And all that's explicit. That is the network. It's all these different connections between all these different conversations, right? And so what is a given conversation anyway? It's a group of people who've come together to talk about, something, and, work something out, figure something out together, right? Here today, we're having the conversation, which we think everyone should be having, literally everyone, right? An asteroid's coming towards Earth. Why should only like 0.0001% of the population be concerned about that? Everyone should be concerned, all hands on deck. Anyway, but so I just really want to point out this nice, healthy balance between sticking it out with a particular group of people and figuring stuff out together within whatever context they've worked out, versus hopping to another conversation, right? So it's, the classic switching problem, right? Do I stay on the horse I'm on? And apologies for that. Do I stay on the electric skateboard that I'm on, or do I hop to a different electric skateboard, etc.? Do I stay in the conversation I'm in, or do I change? But the very fact that that's possible now, right? It's not so much encouraged as it is possible. It certainly is encouraged as far as I'm concerned, because I think humanity, we need to spend some time getting to know each other, right? And that means popping into different communities. And because communities sometimes have these invisible barriers dividing them, right? Even if they're not like intentional anymore or anything like that, but they just happen to be there from whatever, from the past, from whatever, or just from there not being a shared understanding of, So it's because of all that. That's why, that's one of the reasons among many that the block party was invented. The Great American Block Party, woo! Where we just say, hey, everybody, let's all come together, right? If you're a neighbor, join us, right? Have some food, grab a beer, have a seat, right? And let's hang out. And that's what the block party is all about. It's meant to just obliterate all these barriers, bring everyone together into a safe space, a safe, respectful space where we can all share. And out of that is growing this larger concept of a community of communities, right? Where we recognize that, yes, different communities are different, right? We're not all the same, right? We don't all look the same. We don't all talk the same. We don't have the same traditions and culture and all kinds of stuff. Okay, well, let's come together, right? And take on these common challenges that should be uniting us. Let's let them unite us. Let's choose to unite around them, around feeding everyone, around cooling the planet, around ending pandemics, around ending the destruction of the biosphere, the destruction of our home, right? And in the process, we will talk about and co-create all kinds of cool, radical ways of achieving that, from ways of transforming governance to ways of transforming the economy to ways of transforming culture itself and are writing a new story for humanity, like we were talking about earlier with the folk stories and all that. So let's do all of that, right? But in a way that's decentralized, right? Let's all come together and connect and co-create all these solutions in a way that's decentralized. There's no hierarchy. There's no, dictator at the top who's calling the shots and telling everyone what to do. No. And this is why I created this new topic last night, the convergence, but I got way too tired because it was like 3 a.m. or something. And I was like, all right, you know what? No, I have to chill out after my work, and that takes some time. And then, and then I finally hit the sack. So, but I didn't actually get to create that recording, but I came up with the topic, and I talk about it a little bit during the introduction, but it's this convergence of all these mega things coming together. Collective superintelligence, right? Pandemics, planetary overheating, overpopulation, which is a whole topic unto itself. But it's all deeply interconnected. It's totally interconnected with the mode of production of the economy of hoarding, etc. So, but on a positive side, you have this convergence of collective superintelligence. Oh, hey, Dot's joining us from Holland. All right. So, you've got, the convergence includes, welcome, Dot. Welcome back, Dot. All right. I just got to sing a little song. Well, Dot is back and we're going to have a party. Hey la, Dot is back. And she's got some hot ideas and she's doing some big thinking. Hey la, Dot is back. Yeah, we're going to have a party. Woo! All right. Well, welcome back, Dot, and let's get it on. Awesome. So we're recording, and I know Dot's cool with that. So I don't need to pause. And, but by the way, if anyone ever wants to pause, just do this. I'll pause. So, the convergence, Dot, you see that universe image on James's screen? We're deep in the universe of this convergence, right? Between collective superintelligence, the conversation, right, which you can have with or without collective superintelligence. I'm talking about the conversation about how do we save life on Earth, starting with the goal. What's the goal we want to get to? What's the strategy to get there? And right over here at the starting point, what's our first, second, and third next steps? What are our immediate next steps? Let's get really precise and clear about that. So that's the conversation. So you got the conversation with collective superintelligence coming together. right? You've got this whole new brewing initiative around food and the Brooklyn Singularity, right? That's super exciting. You've got plant-based, you've got compassion, you've got all these wonderful trends, right? Nonviolence, communities coming together, right? All these trends coming together, creating this insane convergence. Another part of the convergence is that the house of cards is now flat. All the cards are spread out on the table. Everything's up for grabs. Where are we going from here? So everyone's mind is just cracked open, right? Where are we going from here, right? And you know, it's funny. I remember a few months ago, Nolan and I were joking, and he said in this joking voice, you know, that, well, that's the way that it's always been, and it's the way that it'll always be. You don't hear anyone talking that way anymore, joking or otherwise. There is no, that's the way it'll always be. There is no that. Right now, we're just in this tumultuous transition, looking for some sort of grounding, right? And among the competing narratives as to what's going on, I hate to say it, but the strongest narrative, and it's not that it's that strong, right? It's maybe got whatever, 15% market share or something. There's all these different narratives, but the strongest, and it's very weak, is that, I guess we're going back to business as usual. But come on, does anyone even believe that? Nobody even believes it. But I'm just saying, it's the only one, it's the leading, it has more market share than any other narrative, right? There's another narrative that like we're going down, but that's probably third or fourth down the list, right? The second strongest narrative is, oh, we're entering this new economy where people do business on Zoom. Isn't that nice? New economy. So it's the old, capitalist model, but with new clothes for a new season. Come on. But I'm just saying our narratives are just super lame. And look, the whole point of the conversation is to unleash new narratives, co-create new narratives, right? Good, bad, and ugly. A whole bunch of new narratives are going to pop forth. And I have this faith, and I talk about this, I was talking about this just in the last video, I versus we. I have faith that the invisible hand of collective superintelligence will guide us, right, towards those conversations and towards ultimately that narrative that will really serve life on Earth the best. Go ahead, Jackie. Yeah.
You just reminded me of something, so it may be off topic, so forgive me, but I had a meeting on Monday with Thomas Jackson, the writer and director of Prayer for Compassion. And so I emailed him to invite him to be a guest on the Divine Feminine. And he agreed. But I thought, I know I'm excited, I thought that in the same email, I just throw it out there, what we were working on. And he's interested. And he wanted to know if there was a Facebook or a webpage that was already started that shows kind of where we are, where we're going. Have you considered documenting this whole process?
So here's what's happening is the short answer is that we are documenting it. We're just doing it in a very crude way, right? We're recording the meetings and publishing them. Whoop-de-doo, right? But the bigger picture is that what we're doing right here by having the conversation, promoting the conversation, and it's kind of like the story, The Emperor's New Clothes, where, the little boy, at first, when he screams out laughing, he's the only one laughing for a moment, right? And then for a moment, there's dead silence. And it's like, well, what are they going to do? Execute the little boy? And then an old man in the crowd totally gets what's going on, starts chuckling, right? And then other people start laughing, and then people start cracking up. And then next thing you know, they're throwing a freaking blanket on the emperor and saying, "Here, sit down, cover up. You're naked, Jack." Right? And that's that moment that So was talking about 2 videos ago, where we were talking about, like the Russian Revolution. There were the visionaries who were out in front, the intellectuals, who totally got what was going on. They could see it ahead of everyone else. And then there was a moment when everyone got it. Kind of like the Arab Spring. There was all this pressure and, building pressure and tension and all that. And then the dude in Tunisia set himself on fire. And, the rest is history. So these are these singular moments that we talked about earlier. And, part of the conversation is essentially designing the singularity. And yeah, I said designing the singularity. Because, and I sort of want to have, I also want to have a conversation on a separate topic. I'll just point to it now, but it's, letting something just emerge organically versus designing it and saying, boom, let's actually make it this way. All right. Because, and that's an interesting, dialectic between letting stuff emerge and saying, hey, now it's time to actually design something. Right. So that's very much the case with the press conference. That's what comes to mind when I think about designing the singularity, because the press conference is actually something you've got a tremendous amount of control over. You don't control who shows up. You invite all the media. But if you've got a really good story, like what we're doing with the Brooklyn Singularity, then I think a lot of people will come. And it's New York. It's the media capital of the world, right? Mainly in terms of like news, right? It's the news media capital of the world. LA is the entertainment media capital of the world. But news media, it's New York, right? And that's where the United Nations is, right? It's where the financial markets are. It's where so much stuff is, right? There was a writer who said once, he said it's, because, growing up in New York in like the 50s and 60s and 70s, he said what happened in New York mattered in a way that what happened in other places didn't, right? And he said, if you're not from New York, I don't mean any offense here or anything like that. It's just, that's just the way, that was the feeling, that was the experience of being in New York. And so that there is this very real sense of New York being kind of like this center, this capital of the world, right? Like here's an interesting one for you. Miami is the capital of Latin America. Wait a second, Miami's not in Latin America. I know, but it's the capital of Latin America, right? Anyway, we can talk about that later. But New York is the capital of the world. I mean, where else? Geneva? Where the hell is that? Right? It's the capital of the world. London was for a while under the British Empire. And then the British Empire went out with the Macarena. Right? It was an interesting dance while it lasted. And then, it just kind of went away. And all right, we're on to something else now. All right? So we're at the dawn of a whole new age. There's just no question about it. And it could be the age of death. It could be the age of extinction, right? But it's definitely the dawn of a whole new age. I think we have an opportunity to not design the singularity, but take a really good swing at the bat in the World Series of designing the singularity, right? Get up to the plate and take our best possible swing. And that's what President Vicente Fox and I did in 2013. And we happened to connect, and it happened to go sailing outside the park, way past the parking lots and everything, right? And I think we can do that here with the Brooklyn Singularity. I think we can hit this one so far out of the park that they'll just be talking about it all around the world, because it'll be happening at the capital of the world, right? And how gutsy is that, right? That you take it all the way to the capital city of the whole planet. The de facto. I'm not proud of New York. I don't particularly like, it's nice to visit from time to time, but I don't really, it's not my city. It's not my home. I'm not like pro New York. I'm not anti New York. I'm definitely pro New York, but it's not home for me. And that's okay. It's the capital city of the world, right? It's the world's capital. So
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead, James.
as I said there on the last block party, New York, you're right. Like New York is always known all over the world is known as the capital city of the world. Like, you know what I mean? As you said, like Ireland is loved and known all over the world for its attributes. New York is known for that as well. Like, and um, there was an old saying. Well, my father used to say it back in the day, anyway, when I was a child. That, pardon the pun, no. But when America sneezes, the rest of the world gets the flu. No, by that, what he meant is we were 40 years behind America. We were always 40 years behind America with technology and innovation and everything else like that. That's what he was on about. Like, but and so therefore 40 years behind in thinking when you think about it. Like, you know what I mean? So, but now, it seems like that has kind of swung around a bit. But at the moment, no, the world's focus is on America, but more so, as you said, New York is the capital. But the world's focus is on New York now because of one simple thing, which is the situation going on at the moment. And they're watching because they can't understand why a nation that's always been known for being a leader and a thinking nation, innovative and out there in front as a world leader and an example to the rest of the world about the democracy and everything else and what you stand for. And even the Republicans, like as you said, Republicans always supported Ireland and but here the Republican Party there is a political party here that it meant something different. But the point is, it's changed. It's no longer they're not the Republican Party that I used to think of anyway. That's put it that way. Their values seem to have shifted somewhere. But the focus has been lost anyway. In general, in the whole of not the whole of America. There are out there, many states out there, and they're crying out, what the hell is going on, and why are we letting this happen? Like, so, no doubt something's been done about it anyway. But the point is, the world's focus is on New York, not just because it's the capital, but as I said, because its actions during this crisis compared to the rest of America, its actions have been exemplary. You know what I mean? Compared to the other states, and focuses on it because it's a very simple. It's like watching an experiment in a petri dish, really, like, and seeing the different approach. Because New York adapted the rest of most of Europe's sensible approach, and they're still adhering to it, even though they're slowly planning on opening up. But they're not rushing ahead like the rest of them, and they're way in a much better position to do so now, but they're still being cautious. And as I said, I implore the Cuomo brothers. I think they're doing an exemplary job, as well as all the New Yorkers who pulled together. So in saying that, another rant. Point is, what we with the Brooklyn Eats project, what we should do is look for the community, think on a smaller scale again, like within Brooklyn itself, look for a target community that would be willing to cooperate with the plan of, again, now looking to see what areas they have in their community that could be available to turn into a food plot, in a vegetable plot or whatever, and what availabilities they have for roof space and all that. But getting the food organized, getting food delivered there and getting supplies delivered there, as you said, get it up and running, even on that small scale and community scale within Brooklyn, is enough to show, especially as we're in the midst of a crisis now, especially to show that even in the midst of crisis, this can be done. And if a small group of people can arrange this to be done, what can we all do as a collective? That's the message we need to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's key that we do it in a way that's citywide, or in this case, borough-wide, in the case of Brooklyn, right? Where you have a whole bunch of communities represented, a community of communities, right? And that we see one unified thing. Like I would love to just see a fleet of trucks and people all decked out in their hazmats, or I joke when I say hazmats, but you get what I'm saying. You know, all decked out, and it's just like, whoa! It's like this big thing came to Brooklyn. It's almost like it invaded, but it was built by the communities of Brooklyn, the community of Ireland, not the Irish in Brooklyn, the Irish in Ireland, right? And all these other communities around the world that have real skin in the game. Why? Because they need the solution too, right? It's kind of like the private company that funds a university laboratory at a public university to do research that will get published for everyone because they need it too, or they especially need it, so they're willing to fund it, right? Everyone needs for this solution to work. Everyone needs for the Brooklyn Singularity to be a success, so everyone will support it. Because we're going to create the model in Brooklyn and then export it all over the world. And the world will know that it's not alone, because the world capital, the capital of the world, New York, has it figured out and is now supporting the rest of the world from the world capital, the world's capital city. And like the old saying, and like the Frank Sinatra song goes, if we can make it there, we'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. And see, one of the things that's so powerful about that song is he's addressing all of New York. It's up to you, New York. And so just like in 1968 or whenever, when we saw the world for the first time from space, in a way that song addressed New York in a way that had never been addressed before as a whole. It's up to you, New York. Go ahead, Jackie.
So earlier we were talking about where do we start? Like where's, like when I try to have this conversation with people, like, okay, what does it look like? I really don't know yet. Like the action portion of it is that already kind of back here for you, like what it looks like time-wise? Where do we start? Like what's step one? Where do we all do? Like that's the part that I like keeps me up at night. I'm like, okay, what is my part? What should I be working on? Should we all be breaking out and working out on something already? What does it look like?
Yeah, first of all, I love the sense of urgency. Thank you, Jackie. Because that's what kept me up late last night too, making videos. It's like, I got to get this out already. So here's how I see it going down. And this gets back to steps 1, 2, and 3. Don't you love the beauty of it? Start with the goal, then the strategy to get there. And then, all right, where are we right now? How do we, where's our on-ramp onto this strategy, right? That's a nice strategy, you know, but where's the on-ramp, dude? Where's the on-ramp, dude? And that's what steps 1, 2, and 3 are all about. And what I'm proposing, and feel free to propose something totally different, but what I'm proposing for 1, 2, and 3, and by the way, I look at it as a whole. I don't just say, well, let's figure out number 1 first, and then later we'll figure out number 2 independently of that. No. Let's do it as a whole. So as a whole, 1, 2, and 3 are all about the Brooklyn Singularity and making that happen. That's where the center of action should be, in my mind. Nowhere else but there. So with that in mind, okay, what do steps 1, 2, and 3 look like? Step number 1 actually takes us away from Brooklyn and to the whole of the big picture and the conversation, right? The whole of the big picture and the conversation about saving life on Earth. I'm saying we start there. Oh my goodness, Dot's evil twin is here. It's Dot versus Dot. Oh my goodness. Everybody duck. Okay, no, okay, Dot said that Zoom crashed. Anyway, totally got it. So I say we start with the big picture. Step number one is start with the big picture and make it concise, make it powerful, make it visual, make it artistic, make it whatever. But basically, pardon my French, but what I'm talking about is taking the world and rubbing its face in the dog shit of the present reality and saying, hey, this is real, this is here, this is now, and it's time we have the conversation, right? Right? The 17-year-old boy who's out drinking and driving around, all right, he got a couple of slaps on the wrist, but you know what? He just killed his 3-year-old brother in a car wreck. You know what that means? It means it's time for the conversation. We're losing hundreds of brother and sister species every day. We're hemorrhaging species as a planet. It's time for the conversation. We're exponentially overheating. It's time for the conversation. See, I see a rap song coming out of this, right? Dude, it's getting real hot out here. It's time for the conversation. Wait a second, the sea level's rising, dude. It's time for the conversation. Pandemics are everywhere. My aunt got sick. It's time for the conversation, right? Hey man, food's running a little bit low here in the pantry. There's no money left. It's time for the conversation. There's no jobs anywhere. I can't get a job, dude. There's no jobs. It's time for the conversation. The economy is collapsing as we speak. It's time for the conversation. Confidence is going to be lost in the fiat currencies of the world. It's time for the conversation. Food networks are collapsing. It's time for the conversation. What's the conversation? The conversation is, mommy, how do we make it stop? That's the conversation. How do we save life on Earth? How do we get out of this death spiral that is costing us so dearly? And every minute that passes, we lose more and more and more. When is enough enough? When are we willing to have the conversation?
And when are we willing to help each other?
Yeah. And when are we willing to help each other? And the first step towards helping each other is having the conversation together, right? So every meeting should start with the conversation. If you're not having the conversation, I don't know what you've been having. But if you're not having the conversation, I don't know what you've been having. But you're not here, grounded on Mother Earth in 2020, staring reality in the face like we are. So join us. It's time for the conversation. You know what got me into the whole marijuana game in the first place and made me take it seriously? My friend Rick Steves, who's got this whole travel show, and he's pretty famous in this part of the world. Cluck. Those are the crows. Cluck, cluck. The crows are digging what we're saying. That's a good sign. And I've invited them to this conversation. You're absolutely welcome here. Cluck, cluck. On his website, on his travel website, Rick Steves Europe and all this stuff, there was a little banner that said marijuana. It's time for a conversation. How cool is that? Here's what he wasn't saying. Hey, marijuana should be legal, and everyone should smoke it. That's what he wasn't saying. He was saying marijuana. It's time for a conversation. What he's basically saying is come to the table as you are. Whatever your position is, whatever your doubts are, whatever your data is, whatever your thing is. Join us. It's time for a conversation. So, humanity, it's time for a conversation. And we're hosting that conversation right here on the Solution Club and at the Block Party every week. There's 32 hours per week when you can show up to a place where we're having the conversation publicly in the open. Everyone's welcome. The rules are simple. Humanity, it's time for a conversation. So for me, step one is getting that plea and invitation to the conversation, making that crisp and clear and concise. Because that's what I was missing last Friday when I said, hey, let's have the conversation about this and this and this, but I didn't have it down, right? Now we're getting it down, right? And we can exercise that at 5 o'clock today in a little less than 2 hours, when right here, this meeting will shift gears to be the Vegan Collective Intelligence meeting. That's an important announcement, actually, I need to make to everyone. Thanks to Jackie and her creativity and spirit, and actually being a bridge between these two communities, Vegan Collective Intelligence and Solution Club. She's like, listen, I'm like going between meetings. Can't we just come together and build a community of communities? Which was the big theme from last week's meeting. You see how quickly things are happening, right? So it's all falling into place as we get clear what should be our first, second, third steps towards what strategy, towards what end, right? Have the conversation. So at the VCI meeting, let's have the conversation in 2 hours. Let's say, hey, we'd like to propose a look at what we're calling the conversation and see if that's something that VCI would like to embrace or not. It's up to you guys, you know. But we feel that's a huge missing in the world. A huge, huge missing is the conversation. Because look, here's the thing. You got a gazillion different projects all happening in parallel. Somebody's planting a garden over here. Somebody's putting on solar panels over there. Somebody just went vegan over there. You know, whatever. There's all this stuff happening. But it's all totally separate from each other. Everyone's doing their own little mini project, right?
So honestly, when do you really think, in your genius mind, what you have plotted out in your mind, what time frame are we looking at?
All right, good. So here's the time frame I'm looking at. Let's say it takes us a month from now until June 12th, right? To get a bunch of great communities in Brooklyn on board and in the conversation, and the Irish community on board and in the conversation, which it already largely is. And by the way, James, if you have an opportunity to text Natalie, invite her to come back. She had written something into the chat, which I did not read earlier, but I'd like to read it out loud, but I'd like to do it when she's here. So if that's possible, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll just turn off my screen, but that makes no difference to you anyway. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
In 2 minutes.
No. Take your time. There's no hurry. I just wanted her to know that we'd love to have her back. That's all. So, but whatever's good for her. No, nothing urgent. You see, the conversation is really about what can we all do together in terms of co-creating a goal, a vision, a strategy, and some first steps. And here's where we get to another really interesting dichotomy, right? Between, it's very close to the I-we dichotomy, which is this. What I'm not saying is that humanity, and I'm going to get to some of the points are a little bit subtle, but not too bad. I'll make it really clear, okay? But actually, let me first answer Jackie's question, and not leave that one hanging at all. So I'm seeing about a month for us to really get Brooklyn communities and international communities all here, and now we've got like a serious. Oh, that's the chipmunk looking for food, knocking stuff over. So about a month to get, I mean, we can do it faster, but let's just ballpark it at a month. Let's be generous. Give ourselves more time than what we need. Give it a month to get all these communities together around the Brooklyn Singularity, Brooklyn Eats, etc. Okay? So let's get all that together. Once all that is together, and we're having a whole bunch of really cool meetings on all these really cool topics and getting everything, you know, planned out and mapped out, right? Then the detailed plans from that point forward will become much more clear than they are right now. But right now, from where I stand, a month from now, we should have so many communities so passionately involved and so many conversations happening even in parallel, right? Through breakout rooms and different parallel meetings and all that. We're gonna build out this whole network of conversations, right? In a, you know, in a very manual way, I would add.
Where would you like us to start inviting them to? Which forum would you, because we have so many hours, which one is best as we start inviting these communities?
Yeah, I'll give you a short answer and I'll give you a longer answer. The short answer is to both the Block Party and the Solution Club. The longer answer is that what we need to do, part of our internal homework here, our housekeeping, is, and this gets to something I talked about at the Block Party, you know, what should we do next? What should we be focused on? We need to come up with the list of topics, the list of conversations. We need to create a menu of conversations. And then we need to populate the Block Party and the Solution Club with that menu, right? And now that we have the conversation as our foundation, that's the obvious conversation to start with, is the conversation, right? And then after we've spent, I don't know, a couple hours on the conversation, then we can shift gears and very intentionally and with great discipline, shift gears to the next conversation. What is the next conversation? Well, the next conversation, I would imagine, would be a community of communities. And then that bifurcates into a community of communities in Brooklyn and a community of communities outside of Brooklyn, right? And even if the community is in Manhattan, it's outside of Brooklyn. Some famous writer once wrote that the greatest distance in the world is the distance between Brooklyn and Manhattan, right? Because, you know, Manhattan is just this ultra expensive, you know, lifestyles of the rich and famous, you know, Wall Street, this, that, all, you know, Madison Avenue, so many things. So, and it's just super expensive. Whereas Brooklyn is more like, you know, it's Brooklyn. It's more, you know, yes, it's city, but it's not Manhattan, right? And as such, it's, in my mind, Brooklyn is America's neighborhood. It's America's original neighborhood, right? Where people went to live. You go to work in Manhattan, but you live in Brooklyn, right? Kind of thing. All right, we got Uncle Frank in the house. Welcome back, Uncle Frank. We are recording and we are having the conversation, which is, as soon as I see you wave or something, I'll recap that for you. So back to answering your question, and then I want to talk about this kind of dichotomy, this I-we dichotomy around, you know, the conversation, the movements that emerge from it, the specific projects that emerge from it, et cetera, including Brooklyn Eats, Brooklyn Singularity, et cetera, okay? But first, to answer your question, Jackie. So a month from now, we got all this community of communities all together on fire. At that point, the collective intelligence is going to be so powerful, even if there's just, I don't know, whatever, hundreds of us at that point. The collective intelligence is going to be so powerful that it, not me, not us, but it right? Yes, us, the collective intelligence at that point, the collective superintelligence, will come up with the rest of the solutions to get us from that moment in time, June 12th, to the press conference, including picking a date for the press conference, a location, who all needs to be there, topics, and how do we get from here to there? And how do we get some media before the press conference, which is very important. Part of the reason that the press conference with President Fox was such a success was that I talked with the Seattle Times a couple days before, and I said, look, here's what's going down, right? And they published a story about it, that President Vicente Fox is coming, and that's what got all the media to come. The Seattle Times essentially became our PR expert, our PR person, and it worked, right? And so we'll get because this story, once it starts bubbling, first of all, it's going to be hard to keep a secret because we don't want it to be kept a secret anyway, right? We want everybody involved. Come, yeah, you, get over here. I want to talk to you. You know, New York style. Let's get it on, right? And the world. So we, again, we got two sets of communities, Brooklyn communities and everywhere else, right? Brooklyn communities because you're already there, everywhere else because we want to be there. We want to be there with you, supporting and co-creating this with you, right? Everyone's got special knowledge to contribute. Everyone, everywhere in the world. And New York is the place to come together and do it. And Brooklyn specifically. Brooklyn's where people live, right? Manhattan is kind of this weird aberration. It's just way too built up, right? Forget it. So, yeah, we'll get to Manhattan, but we're first going to do it in Brooklyn, which is a real, that's where people live. People live in Brooklyn.
We also have to remember that there's a lot of projects in Manhattan. There are lots of projects, and I'm born and raised in Lower Manhattan. So, and I think they get missed too. A lot of those underrepresented, underfunded areas, because under the stigma of Manhattan, they get lost. So it's nice that we can invite those communities into the conversation because they get lost, because they get wrapped up into the whole wealth and idea of what Manhattan is. So I think when we move, that's a beautiful segue into going into Manhattan too and getting their support.
Oh my goodness. No, and the bigger picture here is as we get this rolling in Brooklyn, all the boroughs are going to demand it. They're going to go to the borough presidents and they're going to say, listen, Jack, either you get on board or we're going to freaking impeach you, Harlem style. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So, don't mess and let's do it. Right. But any borough president worth their salt will have thought of that before it even comes to that, and they'll be on board. They'll be so on board. And then boom, and then it's all New York City, and then guess what? Bam, next thing you know, it's in Albany, and it's in all of New York State. And then Jersey, the Garden State, they got no excuse, right? Let's just plant more gardens, right? And on and on. Right? Again, if we can make it there, we'll make it anywhere. If we can do it in Brooklyn, we can do it anywhere. So let's do it in Brooklyn. Okay, looks like Dot's got to drop off. No problem. Hey, and look forward to seeing you on Friday. Thanks for popping in, Dot. And Jackie needs to grab a bite. Shall we just take a break? It's been a while since we've taken an official break. It's been 2 hours actually. How long a break do we need? And let's be a bit more generous with ourselves. Jackie, you need a bite. Get a proper bite, And then we'll have a really good on-ramp onto the VCI in an hour and a half. So what makes sense to people?
Well, I'm gonna cook something to eat there now myself as well. So anywhere 20 minutes.